Okay, I think we'll get started. Thank you. Of course, council colleagues, we are here this evening in Municipal Chambers at 6:30 p.m. Before we get started, we just have a couple of notes. As you may or may not be aware, this week is Emergency Preparedness Week. I think we don't have the chief with us. Do I see the chief? No, we don't have the chief. I didn't think so. Okay. Though we did have a long discussion about Emergency Preparedness Week earlier today. Obviously, this is an initiative to alert Canadians to how they can ensure that they're prepared for the first 72 hours after a crisis, including making sure you have sufficient food stores, among other things. So lots of information on a Government of Canada website that I'm sure you can find through our North Grenville website. Also, this week is the Canadian Mental Health Association's Mental Health Week. This year's theme is Healing Through Compassion with the hashtag Compassion Connects. And interestingly, there are some individuals in our community who are very interested in a Compassionate Communities initiative, which is something that started outside of our municipal boundaries, but provides a way to enhance the efforts of what is already a very compassionate community here in North Grenville. So if you check out the hashtag Compassion Connects, you'll find lots of resources being provided through the Canadian Mental Health Association. Also this week is Bulk Garbage Collection Week. This is your chance to dispose of bulky items such as furniture or carpet. Of course, you do need special tags, and they're available at Johnson's Independent Grocer or here at the municipality. Also, big day on Sunday, we have the opening of the Kemptville Farmers Market. Councillor Strachan is now chair of that board, so I'm sure you're madly preparing for the long-awaited opening of the annual Kemptville Farmers Market. How many vendors this year, Councillor Strachan? Any idea?
Opening day has 65, I believe. So it'll be a full slate. So yeah,
wow,
it's a good turnout this year.
Very impressive. And then, of course, we have Mother's Day also on Sunday. So just wanting to wish all the moms and grandmothers out there a happy Mother's Day. And of course, sending our thoughts to those who have lost mothers, knowing that this day can also be a difficult one. And finally, of course, it is Municipal Clerks Week. I think we're starting a new tradition in the municipality to recognize our municipal clerks. These are folks who are often behind the scenes. They lend a lot of expertise and help councils and staff navigate our municipal legislative landscape. Not an easy job by any stretch. So we'd just like to take a moment this evening to recognize those who have supported us in a clerking role. So first, Chloe Preston, here you are. This is for you. And to your colleague, Megan, we'd like to recognize Mary. Did I say? Megan. Okay, but Megan is not here. But Mary has joined us as our deputy clerk. Excellent. Mary, please come up. We had Megan written here, but I think I was a little bit confused. Mary, welcome. Mary has joined us as a deputy clerk as of a month ago, more or less, a little bit more. Yeah, about a month, eh? Okay, excellent. And finally, we'd like to recognize Hilary Jeannot. Hilary has played so many roles in the municipality, but she clerked for us for at least a year, if not more, and oversaw the clerk's department and has been very integral to keeping council on the right side of the tracks. So thank you, Hilary. Happy Clerks Week. So we are joined virtually, I believe, by Megan. Is that right? So Megan is had been with us full time. She is now supporting us in our transitions and also was a very integral player. So Megan, I know you're virtual, which means you're not in the building, but we appreciate your service as well. And if you come by, we'll make sure to properly recognize you in the coming months or weeks, whenever you're here in person. So with that, we're going to go to calling our meeting to order. And we do have a land acknowledgement, and I'll ask one of my colleagues to read the land acknowledgement. Councillor Sullivan.
Excuse me, before we start with the land acknowledgement, could I please also acknowledge that it's Nurses Week?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
And give a big shout out to the nurses in North Grenville who do so much. There are nurses now in the mobile crisis unit riding with the OPP. There are many nurses in primary care. We need more, but there are nurses in primary care. Absolutely, the Kemptville District Hospital nurses, give big shout out to those, and the Lanark Leeds Grenville District Health Unit, or United Counties Health Unit. So big shout out to all the nurses in North Grenville, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you. We have another meeting tomorrow night where we can also give a shout out to our nurses, but thank you very much for highlighting that. Councillor Sullivan, would you like to read our land acknowledgement?
Yes, thank you. The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous-informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you. Now we'll go to approval of the agenda. Be it resolved that the council agenda for its regular meeting on May 7th, 2024 be approved as presented. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sullivan, thank you. Any questions or comments on the agenda? Not seeing any. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Good, that carries. No closed session this evening, colleagues. Any disclosures of interest in regards to perceived or real financial benefit or loss arising from tonight's meeting? Not seeing any. We'll move on. And I believe we have a recommendation for National Denim Day 2024. Do we have a presentation or just the motion? Okay. So colleagues, I'll just read this. And if one of you would like to move in second, whereas breast cancer is the most frequently diagnosed cancer in Canadian women, and it can be completely cured if caught in time, whereas 29,400 Canadian women were diagnosed with breast cancer in 2023, which represents 26% of all new cancer cases. And notably, 260 were men. And whereas 5,400 women died of this disease in 2023, which represents 13% of all cancer deaths. And whereas by proclaiming National Denim Day, the municipality of North Grenville assists the Cure Foundation for Breast Cancer in raising awareness. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Corporation of the Municipality of North Grenville proclaim Tuesday, May 14th, 2024 as National Denim Day in the municipality of North Grenville. Mover to seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Strachan, Councillor Wilson. Any comments or questions? Pretty self-evident, I think. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Good. All right. We will move on then to our waterfront access strategy. And I believe we do have a delegation from Dillon Consulting. Is it Ms. Bronstein? Martina? Okay.
Hi there. Can you see and hear me okay?
She is virtual from what I gather. There she is. We see her. Hi, Martina.
Hi.
I think we're just going to connecting to audio.
Okay.
We should be with you shortly. Just trying to activate the audio.
Okay.
Just testing your audio, Martina.
Hello, test.
Can you say something?
Testing. Can you hear me?
Oh, I think we can hear her through the laptop, but not through the... Try again, Martina.
Testing. Hello. Can you hear me?
Okay, we're still... Okay, she is audible through the live stream, but not through the other mechanisms. Just council colleagues, while I have you, I think we are planning for a launch of the opening of our splash pad. I believe we have a date for that. Tammy, do you remember the date? It's like, I think just after the long weekend, maybe? The 27th. So of course, we hope that our splash pad is open prior to then. I think it's very likely it could be, but we will launch the opening of the splash pad, which is the last element of our Riverside Park revitalization, which of course included the ice pad and the rebuilt and expanded municipal pool house, which is an amazing building now when you look at all of the features of that building and the fact that it can serve people both in the winter and the summer. And there's place for the lifeguards to meet and caucus and train, which is just wonderful. So we look forward to opening the splash pad. Martina, were you with us now?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
So maybe what we'll do is, can Hillary sort this out and we'll move on to another item? What's your advice, Chloe? Okay, so we have two delegations that are virtual this evening, colleagues. So I think perhaps we'll just take a couple of minutes to see if we can sort out the technical issues. Okay, sounds good. So we'll just take a little recess.
Martina, could we ask you to speak again? Martina, could you try again?
You hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. Beautiful.
Okay, just one moment. We're just waiting for a few moments.
No problem.
Okay, I believe Martina, you're ready to go?
Yes, I
Please
am.
God?
Yep. Can
Yes,
you hear
okay.
me
Good.
okay now? Everyone can hear me okay?
Yes, I believe
Okay.
we can hear you. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Good evening. I am here to present the North Grenville Waterfront Access Strategy. The report. We're at the final stage of the project. So, as noted, my name is Martina Brownstein. I'm from Dillon Consulting. We are also we're partnered up on this project with Urban Metrics, who did some of the evaluations on the market side and analysis of the evaluation of the boating market and so on. And the municipal staff that were also involved in this project, and I believe some of them are in the room with you today, Matt Gilmer, Tammy Hilbert, and Heather Curry as well. So the agenda for this evening is really to provide a high-level overview of the project, to also talk about the engagement process and what we heard from the community, to then take you through sort of a high-level vision and the principles for the waterfront access strategy. What is the strategy? And finally, the recommendations. So as we commenced, pardon me, as we commenced this project, really, we needed to understand the purpose, and the purpose really was there was multiple perspectives and multiple needs to be met through this project, which and the onset we knew was going to be really critical for us to resolve through the process and through the engagement. But really, we are looking to develop a long-term vision with the community, with the staff, with the stakeholders, and the council, and to improve the connectivity, the sort of the functions of the park spaces and the trail system along the waterfront, and to do all of those components through improving the access, the tourism experience along those two waterways, while also balancing the environmental conservation, which is so important to North Grenville, and a defining feature of North Grenville. And in developing this access strategy, we also reviewed a number of policies, plans, and studies that are already in place, and all of those studies, recommendations were really leading towards having this waterfront in the municipality that is accessible, and this particular waterfront access strategy advances those strategic directions from the municipality. And on that, as well as the community strategic plan, and many of the goals and the actions under the strategic pillars also met through the recommendations of this strategy. So we commenced the project in summer of last year. The first phase was really about understanding the community needs, the vision, and completing the various assessments, high level, sort of very strategic, at a strategic level, of what the existing waterfront access locations are and what could they be in the future, and identifying what the gaps are as well. And then in phase two is where we focused the beginning of or I guess late 2023 and the beginning of this year, to really formalize this draft concept plan that was set through the framework, and the vision and the recommendations were all kind of brought into those pieces. So the waterfront access was first analyzed at a larger scale from a municipal wide level, and then we also zoomed into to better understand sort of those urban settlement areas, and the hamlets as well, and to understand what the opportunities were at a high level, and as well as the challenges. Then we went through a more detailed analysis by location to assess the different components that we could then compare amongst the various locations. So existing amenities, understanding the tourism, like how it aligns with the various strategies and how it fits into the strategy, and then as well as the opportunities and challenges. And so there was 21 locations that were identified as potential access locations, and that's sort of the number that we started with. I am realizing that I'm not asking you to advance the slides, so please, if you may advance the slide to the next. Yeah, so this is the detailed chart and evaluation assessment that we've completed for each of the locations. Next slide. Next slide. So looking at the engagement, it was really important for us to, again, identify the various tactics and different events that were forming the round one engagement. As noted there, the participation was really the events were really well attended, including the surveys, and from having the stakeholder engagement, we had some virtual sessions where there was 30 people in the first session and then 17 people in the second. We also had key informant interviews, as well as I think I saw some of your faces when we had the bus tour, and then the in-person workshop as well for visioning. And then in phase two, we had a virtual session to present the draft concept plan, and that one had 48 people attend, and an online survey which had 126 respondents. Next page. What we heard is really that the environmental stewardship, sustainability was really important, and that would also fall into understanding of where the expansion of the waterfront access for recreation, year-round usage, amenities, and placing, like continuing to understand the balance between the various needs of the community and how can that be done in a sustainable way, and where the footprints already exist. Prioritizing the trails connectivity, really looking for improved facilities and year-round maintenance, and exploration of the tourism paths, and how can that be integrated into the strategy. But overall, really, there was up to 77% in the most recent survey we did. 77% of the respondents supported or strongly supported the waterfront access strategy developed to date. Next slide. Next slide. So in looking at what was the established waterfront vision and the principles, I'll spend a little bit of time just to say that really it was really crafted by the community itself. This was part of one of the visioning exercises, and we received more feedback the second time through the virtual public meeting. And it is that the waterfront access is enriched by clean, biodiverse, safe, and navigable waterways, acting as the heartbeat and lifeline of our community. It was really powerful statement, and I think it really represents the community's values. In the next slide, there are a number of design principles that were crafted as well with the community to facilitate this critical waterfront planning and design. So these are foundational principles and best practices to help guide the creation of the waterfront access location, and then down the line also their implementation. Next slide. So in looking at then what is the overall framework for the waterfront access and the strategy, from having 21 access locations at the beginning of this project, and through that evaluation process, 19 of those were the optimal locations that were recommended as future investment and future planning needs to go into to make a connected and viable waterfront access system for the municipality that's integrated into the trails, parks, and other tourism draws in the municipality. Next. So how to define when we have 19 locations across a fairly wide geography of the municipality, we started to look at what is each of the locations role versus function. So in the role side, we developed a framework that the role is either a destination or a community node. A destination is something that is obviously would require more investment and is supporting the tourism growth, and the community nodes reflect and respect the in-between locations that support the day-to-day use of the waterfront. And then on the function side, we also identified with the community that there was sort of three key functional nodes: a park node, a boating node, and then there's those locations that are both park and a boating node. So the icons below signify sort of the combination of those role and function, and how we created a framework really sort of in a simple strategic way, which we'll get to in a minute, to understand the distribution of these and to see it in a spatial way, to understand sort of the equity piece as well within the municipality. Next slide. Each one of those nodes was also further symbolized with understanding that what are some of the key features or amenities, and we had some icons that also spoke to what the recommendations were for each one of those strategic nodes. Next slide. So this is where all of those icons and the beautiful colors and the mixes of colors come together. And really this just shows how through the evaluation and the consultation with the community, we came up with an easier way to help a reader and yourselves through implementation to navigate through the strategy, having this sort of one side of it show the darker in the middle. The darker blue line is the Rideau River. The dots along the lighter blue line is the Campbell Creek. Each one of them is assigned a role and a function, and then the amenities are below. Next slide. So in having that framework set up, we then further evolved that evaluation table that I showed earlier to really look at the detailed assessment of what are the recommendations, and then how what node it was assigned. And then we also did a very high level comparative cost estimate in the kind of order of magnitude to understand what is the investment needed for each of the future waterfront access locations. So looking through recommendations and implementation, if I can just ask you please to advance the slide. We look at this diagram again, and the major component when we look at the next steps and the implementation is the costs associated and also the funding. So on the next slide, we mapped out, or sorry, we did a graph of a bar chart of how many projects fell into sort of the level of investment that's needed. Pardon me. And what's really really wonderful is to say that 10 out of the 19 locations fall under the 150,000 approximately dollar investment. So the larger, there are a few that are, you know, $1 million and $1.5 million, but for the most part, there are some, half of the locations really fall into that that investment bracket. So that that really was an interesting finding as we costed it out, because it does allow then for council and staff to look at these next funding opportunities, which I will speak to in a minute. So the other part of the phased cost implementation, we also broke it down in the strategy to look at what are those short-term, medium-term, and long-term investments. And sorry, can you advance the slide? Thank you. And so looking at what are those priorities, and the 1 to 5 years was deemed as the high priority, 5 to 10 as medium priority, and 10 and beyond was a low priority waterfront access location. And all of those priorities may need to be updated during the life cycle of this strategy, because there are certain council priorities that may change in that time frame, available funding sources, technical investigations, and the feasibility, which may push one project closer to completion than others. And of course, ongoing input from the community, which will also continue to be a critical part in the implementation of these projects. Next slide. So looking in this chart, we've looked at all of the different owners and understanding those priorities as well in the implementation. It provides the approximate high level, like magnitude of looking at the cost, like understanding the level of investment for the municipality is the greatest, and that there are some opportunities to work with both federal and private investors on some of the locations. So the estimate also was for the municipality for all three of those timeframes at about $8 million. So the funding sources for either capital projects or tax-supported funding, the community infrastructure funding programs, and there's also the municipal revenue and offset tools as well that were suggested as the funding sources. And so when we look at the high priority waterfront access nodes, those are the ones that are labeled with a line. I'm going to take you just quickly, just being respectful of your time, through the next few slides just to show the level of detail provided for the high priority locations. So next slide, please. So that would be, and in no particular order, except we kind of, for the whole study, we went from west to east. So the priorities as high were vetted with the community as well to ensure that the community agreed with the types of investments that are happening or will be happening in their community. So Henry Street Park, Burt Rapids Bridge Boat Launch, and the Burt Rapids Lock stations were 3 of those. And you could again see the various implementation, the investment and access node, as well as the recommendation for each. We'll go to the next ones. So this is still in the high priority, which is Curry Park and the Rotary Park and Prescott Street Dock. And so there's some recommendations of improvements. Again, the level of investment and the kind of funding mechanisms that could be explored. On the next slide, we have the Bishop's Mills Cheese Factory. And in conclusion, on the next slide, for the high priorities, we have the Muldoon Road Boat Launch and Ferguson Forest Center, and specifically looking at Anniversary Park. So to conclude this presentation, there's just 2 more slides where I also wanted to identify the medium priority waterfront access areas, which were the Shepherd's Close property, the Escower Drive right away, the Gideon Adams Park, the Waterfront Trail expansion, Riverside Park, Beach Road right away, and the Muscle Road abandoned Bridge Creek crossing. And on the next slide, the locations that were deemed as the low priority at this time is the John C. Foster Park, Ferguson Forest Center, Rideau River access, the Equinell Park River Trail, and County Road 20 Bridge Creek crossing. And that concludes a summary of our findings, our engagement with the community, the framework, and the final recommendations for the plan.
Great, thank you very much. Questions for Martina at this stage? I know this was a very comprehensive exercise, lots of excitement in the community, and I think a lot of want to create that enhanced connectivity. So Martina, we know you did a really thorough job of, I think, coming to terms with the yet to be seen potential, right, of connecting all those points throughout the municipality to the creek. So just looking for any questions from council. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Not a question, but just a comment. Thank you, Martina. You must be very proud to deliver such a comprehensive report. It gives us a lot to think about. And I note at the end under the implementation framework, you state that it'll require strong political will to facilitate some of these actions over the long term. I'll briefly state I'm advocating for 2 of those projects. May not be fair, but I'll note that the word trail is mentioned over 90 times in the report, and it's usually connected to the word connectivity. So I'm sure the rest of council knows where I'm going with this. The waterfront trail, I think, is key, and I think we should pay special attention to expanding the waterfront trail. I think it's the one thing that'll get most people to the water, whether they're boaters as opposed to boaters. I think it checks most of the boxes, although it's a difficult project to undertake. I just hope that this council and future councils have that political will to follow through, because I think it'd be a wonderful, unique feature, natural feature to exploit the shoreline along the North Shore from Rotary Park, possibly even Riverside Park, all the way to Anniversary Park. And my neighbors in Oxford Mills would not take too kindly if I didn't advocate for the kayak canoe launch. And I'd like to see that hopefully moved from a medium priority to a higher priority. So thank you very much.
Martina, any thoughts on that?
I think that's really a wonderful point to make. And I think in terms of, what the community as the various feasibility pieces and assessments and future planning for all of these projects happens, there's some that might be longer, may require environmental assessments, may require other kind of work before, and approvals from your conservation authorities before you get started. But I think the conversation is that there's a strategy that identifies the pieces that are needed to kind of move the conversation. And I think based on our assessment on the distribution and the equity piece across the municipality, that was another component that framed the recommendations as we did from high, medium to low. But this is a living document, as you know, as received by you. This is a could be a living document that you reassess and move the priorities through the various levels based on your continuous conversation and the pieces that actually start to strengthen, one location over the other.
Great, thank you. I too am sort of reconciling, I think, some of Deputy Mayor's comments around that connectivity in the heart of Kemptville, but at the same time, look at some of the merits of the Bishop's Mills cheese factory site or the Muldoon launch and can see that there's a lot of appetite among our rural residents to also see some of that connectivity. So lots of possibilities here, and I guess it's up to our hardworking staff from Parks and Rec and community engagement to really sort of figure out what's the path forward, recognizing that funding opportunities are always key. And I know some are being actively pursued right now. I think Ms. Holbert for a number of possibilities. So we look forward to getting further updates on that. Seeing if there are no other hands, then I will thank Ms. Bronstein for her time. And I would ask that council consider receiving the Waterfront Access Strategy Report for information purposes. Can I have a mover? Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Strachan. And the motion is, of course, that we receive the Waterfront Access Strategy Report. So I will call the question. All in favor? Good. We're just going to do a little change in chair for 20 minutes. Deputy Mayor is going to chair the next presentation because unfortunately I have to step out shortly. So he'll oversee the audit presentation and then I'll be back.
Thank you, I think, Madam Mayor. So the next item on the agenda is our audit presentation. And I imagine, Chloe, that it's virtual? Yes, okay. So we would be welcoming Laurie Huber. Yeah, great.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Great to see everyone here tonight. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep.
I am Laurie Huber. I'm the audit partner responsible for the financial statement audit of the municipality of North Grenville. So I will walk you through what I've provided in your package is a fairly comprehensive report which outlines the audit along with the accounting for 2022. So certainly go through the highlights of what I think is important in terms of the deck that we've provided. But as always, to the extent there are any questions, would certainly welcome those either at the end of the presentation or along the way. I'm certainly good either way. So jumping into it, in terms of the status of our audit, you'll see on slide number 5, we are essentially complete, subject to having the council approval of the financial statements. Once council accepts and approves the financial statements, we will be in a position to release our audit opinion in final. But you will see in the deck, and we will see in a minute, our draft audit report is included in the package as well. Based on the results of our findings, we would propose to issue a clean or an unmodified or an unqualified report for fiscal 2022, which essentially says that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial activities of the municipality for the fiscal year 2022. So jumping into the numbers themselves, I know the full set of financial statements were included in your package, but what I've pulled out for you to highlight are the two most significant pieces in the financial statement package, which is the first one here that you will see, which is your statement of financial position, otherwise known as your balance sheet. So it outlines the assets and liabilities of the organization at the close of business on December 31, 2022, with comparative information for 2021. You'll see on the right-hand side, I've tried to give you some of the more significant variances in terms of the changes year over year, recognizing this is a little bit of old information at this stage. I'll certainly touch on the highlights, but again, if there's something that piques your interest, certainly feel free to ask. So you'll see at the top of the house there, you will see cash remained quite strong. Cash in the bank was just over 36 million compared to 34 million in the previous year. As we work our way down, I'll just touch briefly on a new item that we've pulled in the financial statements as its own separate line item. That relates to a loan receivable of about $445,000 related to a foundation amount that happened in the fiscal 2022. So there is a new note 4 in the financial statements themselves that articulates more detail around that, but that's really what that amount is meant to convey to a reader of the financial statements. On the liability side of the house, liabilities have increased net overall. However, the interesting piece, it's often difficult to explain. Your accounts payable and accrued liabilities are very much a function of timing of payment at the end of the year. So it really depends when those bills come in and when they're actually paid. So nothing uniquely different there other than the settlement of vendors at different times year over year in comparison. What did change that you will see, which is a significant change, is your deferred revenue, which is your obligatory reserve fund. So there is a note in the financial statements that articulates the individual components of that financial statement caption, but you will see there was a significant increase this year on the collection of development charges that run through this obligatory reserve. To the extent they are unspent or not used, they will sit on the balance sheet until they come into the statement of operations. So that's really the reason for the change there, and also ties back to the increase in cash that you'll see at the top, that we saw at the top of the page. The other item I know that council is always interested in is long-term liabilities or the debt. You will see it has decreased year over year with the regular repayments on the existing loans during the year, driving that decrease. So after you take your financial assets and your financial liabilities, you can see the organization was pretty similar, pretty whole compared to 2021, with your net financial asset position at about 3.9 million compared to about 3.7 million in the previous year. Of course, the most significant portion of your balance sheet and your assets really relates to the investments that you've made in your physical plant, or otherwise known as your tangible capital assets. So you can see they've maintained relatively consistent year over year as well, ending the year just shy of 105 million compared to 103 in the previous year. There's two things going on in that caption in year. Of course, the annual charge for amortization is included in there. That was about $4 million. To offset that in-year charge, there were additions, and I've given you some of the highlights of the bigger additions that we saw flowing through that financial statement caption in year. So
Excuse me.
everything, yep.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Ms.
That's
Huber,
okay.
I wonder, when we finish with this top sheet, whether we could pause and ask the rest of council if they have any questions?
Of course.
Just a pause? Okay. Have you almost finished the summary of this page?
It's a great place to stop, yes.
I had a question, and I'm somewhat fixated on reserves, and that's regarding the deferred revenue. You mentioned that's development charges that we're obliged to put into a DC reserve fund. And they're captured. So the net financial assets, how do we determine the surplus at the end of the year? How can we find that on this top sheet?
So the in-year surplus is actually going to be your net change on the very bottom line that I didn't get to, which is your
Okay.
municipal equity. That's okay, that we'll actually see on the subsequent pages.
Okay, sorry, I jumped the gun.
Oh, that's okay. So the other thing that you will see, if you were to look in note 6, so the other common pieces that you will see, but by and large, really it is development charges. Out of that $9.1 million, $8 million of that is related to development charges. The other things you tend to see in there are any unspent gas tax funds, be it provincial or federal funds. And then there's some small amounts in there related to other government grants, which typically relate to capital, like the OSIF program. And then there's some parkland in there too.
Great, thank you.
So maybe,
Yeah, any questions from my council colleagues so far? No, okay. Thank you, go ahead.
oh, thank you. So the next slide is really just some visualizations around the numbers. The numbers can be boring to hear and see. So just putting your investment in tangible capital assets in terms of the individual components of that financial statement caption is always a little bit interesting. So between your roads and your physical buildings and your construction in progress, you're just about 90% of your overall investment, which is, again, just an interesting tidbit based on the financial statement composition. Moving along, there's another graphic that speaks to your reserve and reserve funds, which are obviously a significant component of your overall accumulated surplus or your accumulated municipal equity. I've given you a 5-year trend, which is always sort of interesting to look to see where you've come or where you're going and where you've been. So you can see certainly a slight increase over the course of time. And really, I get asked often, what is the right number? I would say it really needs to be married up against a long-term financial plan and some of the initiatives and things that you might be thinking about doing in the future. But again, I would say from an overall perspective, not a lot of significant change over the course of the last few years. The next slide slices it in a slightly different way, taking your overall aggregate balances of your reserve and reserve funds as a percentage of operating expenses. This is a bit dated, but it's one of the KPIs that the province actually looks at. And the benchmark there would say if you have reserve and reserve funds greater than 20% of your operating expenses, that would be a good thing, or that would be a green light from their perspective. Giving you the same sort of trending analysis, and you can see healthy margin there, certainly just shy of 70% for fiscal 2022. The next slide that we'll see is your tax arrears as a percentage of your current levy. So your tax arrears are those amounts related to tax revenue that your taxpayers have not yet paid to the municipality. This is another KPI that the province does look at, and I've given you the historical trend over the course of the last 5 years, and you can see certainly below the 10%, which they would say anything below 10% is a good thing. So certainly through the course of COVID, you can see there were some deterioration in the receivables, but that certainly has picked up in the subsequent years, and hopefully that will continue to be the case in 2023. Now we get to likely the statement that's likely most interesting to yourself as council, because it's certainly the way you budget. This is your statement of operations, which highlights your total revenues and your total expenses. So this is where you will see, if we jump right to the bottom, this is where you'll see your in-year annual surplus, which is your excess of your revenues over your expenses. That reported amount is $2.3 million compared to $11.9 million in the previous year. So if we jump to the top and just look at the revenue section individually, you will see there's significant variation in your revenues. And certainly I'll try to articulate some of the reasoning behind that. So the first thing you'll see is your development charges from a revenue perspective. That certainly is largely contingent on the projects that will be funded by development charges. So that was a significant decrease in 2022 relative to the previous year. The other piece that tends to skew municipal financial statements in general, I would say, is a function of the capital activity and the capital grants. So to the extent you might get capital funding, that actually comes in full in the financial statements as revenue. So that line will vary depending on the types of grants that have been received and earned during the year. The other piece that I will share with you is the bottom line there in the total revenue section relates to the contributed tangible capital assets. So that was just shy of 7 million. That tends to be very much an anomaly in those years where they do exist, which is those years when the municipality assumes developments or subdivisions as examples, and they are brought into the financial statements and are included on your tangible capital asset. So the amount in 2022 certainly very significantly different than the previous year, but that would be a non-cash item. The other thing that you will see to offset those decreases this year, which is where we've included as a separate line item. So fiscal 2022, these are group or consolidated financial statements. You will see the basis of consolidation in the notes to the financial statements. One change to bring to your attention this year in fiscal 2022 is the fact that the Kemptville Campus Education and Community Center is controlled by the municipality, and the financial standards require any controlled entities to be included in the consolidation. So that's why you'll see new rental income coming in from that entity in fiscal 2022, and you'll see some offsetting expenses down below in the expense section. In total, based on expenses year over year, you'll see pretty similar to the previous year and pretty significant changes over budget. We saw this commonly in 2022 as certainly the activity returned to somewhat new normal levels post-COVID. Inflation and other things are included in those determinations of your expenses. There was nothing uniquely different outside of the campus, the Kemptville Campus Education and Community Center to bring to your attention. So all of those things generated the surplus in year of 2.3 million. That's added to your opening municipal equity, and that lands you in your closing equity of 108 million. And there are notes in the financial statements to show the breakdown, which would include your reserve and reserve funds. That's a lot of information on the statement of operations. Mr. Chair, happy to pause here as well if there are any questions.
No, not from me, but I'll look to my council colleagues if they have any questions. I'll just thank you for highlighting the significant changes from 21 to 22 regarding the Kemptville campus. I think that's something to pay attention to. And appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, if we move along in our report, I'll take you to page number 13, which talks to some of the audit specific items versus the accounting. So just as a reminder to the group, as I said earlier, it is a group financial statement. So we had set our level of materiality to be an aggregate of $750,000 relative to the previous year of $500,000. So just as a reminder to the group as well, this was KPMG's year 2 of the financial statement audit, having taken over from Allen and Partners previous to 2021. So as part of our audit, we are required to highlight any of the items that we identified through the course of the audit, and we separate them into 2 groups. One being anything that would be uncorrected, so not included in the draft financial statements that were circulated as part of your packet this evening. And the second piece would be corrected items that we identified through the course of the audit. So in this case, if we flip to the next slide, based on the presentation items that we identified through the course of the audit, there are 2 items that will certainly be dealt with in 2023, but each of these items are classification only with no impact to your annual reported surplus and/or deficit. So again, from our perspective, not significant individually or in aggregate, and certainly can still opine with a clean opinion on the financial statements related to these uncorrected items. And I know I have had discussions with the team, and they're certainly confident that these will be remedied in 2023. So if we continue to move along, the next slide I'll take you to is page number 16 of our report. So as a reminder to the group, through any financial statement audit process, there is a requirement for your external auditor to be considering any internal controls over financial reporting. To the extent we might identify any significant deficiencies in internal controls, we should be open and upfront and transparent with respect to those, and certainly have conversations with yourself, being those charged with governance. So what you'll see down below is we actually have made that determination. It is in our professional judgment, but I would say a combination of factors have led us to this conclusion. So as we are here in May 2024, the audit for 2022 certainly took a significant amount of effort, certainly a lot of transition on the part of the finance team. And you will see in the back of this report, there were a lot of those journal entries or corrected audit misstatements that culminated into the financial statements that are presented here for you this evening for your approval. So in combination, all of those pieces put together, we believe there's a significant deficiency in internal controls. Now, we have had conversations and certainly know the team is working quite diligently on the 2023 audit, and certainly feeling comfortable that that observation should at least be lessened in 2023, if not removed entirely. But it was something I certainly wanted to make sure that we were openly communicating that determination. In terms of what was new and different on page number 18, just very, very briefly, we also are required to identify any new audit standards that should be incorporated into our audit. There was a new audit standard that you see on the screen here on slide number 18 related to the way that we are required to assess risk. So a KPMG audit approach and audit methodology continues to be a risk-based approach. And what I mean by that is standing back, looking at the financial statements as a whole and trying to identify where we believe there's a greater risk of material misstatement occurring. This was actually a new Canadian auditing standard, not a KPMG audit standard. It also required us to look, if you see at the bottom of the page, to make more considerations around the use of IT in the financial statement audit and just IT in general, making us also have inquiries related to any cybersecurity risks and so on. So we have done all of the things that were required of us under this new standard, and you can see at the bottom of the page, there was nothing significant to bring to your attention. The next slide flips and goes to the accounting side of the house. Fiscal 2023 actually had no new accounting standards that were required to be adopted. But if we flip to the next slide, I wanted to highlight, it's certainly something that we're living and breathing now with the 2023 municipals, is a new accounting standard called asset retirement obligations. We might have even had this conversation when I presented the findings for 2021. So that's live and happening now for fiscal 2023, which will have an impact on the financial statements. And if you've had the opportunity, I have given you some background in the back of our report. but essentially the financial statements today, so today for yourselves being 2022, does not require any consideration to any liabilities that will come in the future related to the remedy of certain assets within the portfolio of the municipality related to certain legislation. So a great example, and probably 98% of what we're seeing related to this new standard, would be any asbestos in buildings, any underground tanks, all of those things that will have to be remedied in some shape or form at some point in the future under this new standard will actually be put on the financial statement. So a bit of a preview, but stay tuned. And I know the team is working hard to make sure they will be able to meet the requirements of this new standard. Moving our way into the back of our report, page number 22, just really briefly as a reminder, in order for us to be properly engaged as your external auditor, we need to be very much mindful of our independence, so never putting ourselves in a position of management. So we have had a fulsome conversation with the team to make sure they understand all of the accounting entries that have culminated through the course of the audit. They have approved those entries that have gone through the financial statements. So certainly feeling comfortable from an independence perspective, we weren't auditing our own work. If we go to the next slide, this is where we all sort of culminate together the financial statement audit, which is really our single draft deliverable, which is our auditor's report. So as I said in my opening remarks, it is a clean opinion in draft, expected to be dated ideally this evening, assuming council will accept and approve the financial statements. It is a standard audit report for what a clean audit does look like in Canada now. I'll jump you through a number of pages and just take you to page number 31 and 32, and we can look at these together, and I promise I'm almost complete. So when we talk about audit quality is something that's near and dear to us and certainly continues to be more and more stringent each and every day from the audit perspective. What we've done at KPMG over the course of the last couple of years, so this would be the first time that you would have seen this, is trying to identify audit quality indicators and certainly giving a rate, which is on page number 32 of our report. So you can see here, certainly consistent with the theme of the other findings and observations that we've made. Certainly there is some work to do in terms of preparations and financial records and accounting and all of those good things, but certainly by and large, the team that is in place now, we're very open, very willing, worked exceptionally hard, and we're very cooperative to get to the place where we are today. So certainly feeling confident that 2023 will look, significantly different than 2022. And Mr. Chair, that's probably a great place to stop. The rest of the report is really more informational items. To the extent there is interest, I would welcome any questions from the group if there are any.
Thank you very much, Ms. Huber. So I guess I have two very general questions. One is, giving us a letter grade in terms of our financial health. What would we be getting, an A, B, C plus? And the second question is, I understand that we've got some homework to do in terms of tightening up our internal controls. Would that be a fair statement?
That would be a fair statement. So with respect to your first question, I actually would give you an A for 2022, in terms of the numbers and certainly the health of the organization at that point in time, recognizing that is a year and a half ago. So certainly no alarm bells. And I think, looking at your balance sheet and looking to see that net financial asset position and seeing some growth in that, certainly year over year, I would say for a municipality of your size and scale, that's not necessarily always the case. And then your second piece, absolutely some work to do, but I know a lot of work has already been underway to remedy that issue. So again, certainly feeling as though it will look and feel different as it should.
I have another question before I go to the rest of council, and that is going back to those key performance indicators. One was you'd mentioned the green light happens once we go over 20%, and that was reserves, the ratio reserves to what?
As a percentage of your operating expenses. So that would be your total expenses sitting on your statement of operations.
Right. So I recall the slide going by and it looks well over 20%. Is there any caution on having too many reserves? Would you offer?
So it's always interesting. This question does come up a lot. I think many would argue that 20% is too low, and maybe a more meaningful measure would be closer to maybe double that. I would say I deliver a lot of these reports over the course of any calendar year. I would say your municipality is certainly in line with what I would see with others. However, I would put a caveat in there to say the right number really depends on what you have planned for the future. And again, making sure that you're marrying those needs and wants with what you've got in the bank.
Great. Thank you. I'll open the floor to the rest of council. Okay. Thanks very much for the presentation. Oh, there is a question. How did I miss you?
That's okay.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Ms. Huber. Perhaps I missed this, but when you spoke about the some deficiencies in internal controls, have you provided the staff with skills or ideas on how to tighten up the internal controls and improve that?
So through you, Mr. Chair, there certainly has been good conversation, and I know the team has employed some external resources to set up plans, to set them up for success. So I think the team that you now have in place know what they need to do, and there is some external assistance. And I don't know if management might want to comment on that piece as well. But certainly through my conversations and knowing what I know, I think they are certainly working hard to remedy the situation from what we saw in 2022.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The Finance Department has had some significant vacancies over the past few years with the arrival of Dave Dancy, our Deputy Treasurer, as well as for assistance through an external source. We are looking and mapping for future process controls, as well as cross-training. So these are some of the things that we're doing, not all of the things we're doing, as well as recruiting for our treasurer. But these are things that under Dave's and KPMG's lead, we have been taking care of with, as Laurie had stated, the external resources and help.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Oh, so we'll look for a mover and seconder for that that council accept and approve the draft 2022 audited consolidated financial statements as presented. Councillor Strakoyan, Councillor Wilson, and any other further questions? Would you like to weigh in as well? No? No? Okay, all right. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Great, thank you. Now that the seat is thoroughly warmed up, I'll pass it over to the mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for stepping in there, Deputy Mayor. Much appreciated. And of course, thank you to our auditors for working hard and very thoroughly to make sure that we had those consolidated financial statements. We'll move on. We have several items under the consent agenda. These are considered routine or no longer require further discussion. The exception to this rule is that a member may request that one or more items be pulled for discussion and voted on separately. Are there any items that council colleagues are wishing to pull? Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to pull the bicycle rack cost sharing program, please.
Certainly. Anything else before I get a mover and a seconder for our amended consent agenda? Seeing none, Councillor Sullivan, would you like to move that?
Yes, I will.
Seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Good, that carries. So we'll move on. We have the adoption of our privacy breach policy. I do not believe that is under consent. Right, so over to Ms. Dunlop again. Ms. Dunlop? Oh, Ms. Preston. Excellent. Thank you. Go ahead.
It's a very brief report this evening for council. As council is aware, but for the public's perception, the municipality adheres to the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, which mandates that institutions such as the municipality protect personal information and ensure individuals' right to privacy. The attached policy for council consideration this evening, which seeks to be consistent with procedures for staff to follow in the event of a breach. We had done an audit of our internal policies and had not had a consistent policy to follow in these cases. So one has been adapted for council consideration.
Any questions in regards to the breach policy? Ms. Preston, I just want to ask, is there a standardized approach to privacy breaches within the municipal sector, or does it vary based on community?
So there is a privacy commission that the municipality adheres to. They adopt various forms of breach policies. This one was adapted from the one from the Nation municipality, as well as a few others. So there is a similarity to many municipalities' approaches to these procedures.
Excellent, thank you. There's also reference to a risk assessment chart in terms of the policy. Is that risk assessment done fairly regularly? I know that obviously it's a wild world right now in terms of the efforts to breach privacy, especially among large organizations that may be holding sensitive data. Do we have a sense of what a risk assessment status would be at the present time?
I wouldn't seek to speak to that. I would think that we are in a good state, and that if that were the case, I know that we have regular controls in our IT policies to address these situations, and we are regularly looking at our policies to ensure that we are mitigating risks anywhere we do identify them. So any policies that may come forward for council consideration would be in line to mitigate those risks.
Great, thank you. Anything else from council colleagues? Seeing nothing, no hands, I'll look for a mover and a seconder. That council adopt the privacy breach policy. Councillor Wilson, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Sullivan, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Good, that carries. All right, moving down on our agenda, of course, our municipal tax rate and BIA levy were adopted through consent. So we have two things under Parks, Rec and Culture this evening. We have our Blue Community Policy as well as our Zamboni purchase. Who is presenting the Blue Community Policy? Okay, welcome, Mr. Guy.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Okay, thank you.
Just waiting for that to come on. All right, we're just loading that presentation. And then we'll get going. Mr. Guy, we see some progress being made on the railings in the municipal arena. I think we're about halfway there. Is that the case?
Yes, the extra steps have been installed, and they're just going through the engineering for the railings.
And is it one railing in the middle of
That's
sort of the
correct.
extended cement
Yeah,
block?
they extended the steps to accommodate a railing that would go down the center aisle. People would walk on either side of the railings to get to their seat.
Excellent. And I think in discussions with Joe earlier, we expect hopefully by the next hockey season for sure, if not a little bit earlier.
That is the plan.
That is the
They're
plan.
to be completed by June 20th.
Okay. Wonderful news.
And I will add, while we're waiting, that and Joe can elaborate if he wants to, the splash pad was turned on today.
Ah,
It did work. And there is a staff training tomorrow, correct, Joe?
and I understand, of course, at staff's recommendation, made a decision to recycle the water within the splash pad, correct? Which is why
Yes.
that additional training is needed?
Yes.
All right. And you're looking at testing the water multiple times a day in order because it's being recycled, of course? Is that the idea?
Yes, it will be, the water will be tested. Not sure if it will require testing as much as you would for the pool, but
Right.
it will require testing.
Okay. And of course, by recycling the water, we're obviously able to preserve sort of the precious resource that is water in our community. I think a little bit higher cost, but in the end, likely a good return on investment.
Certainly, when we were scoping out for the splash pad, we had lots of conversations with our Public Works Department, and it was their recommendation that we look at a recycle system for that reason.
Excellent. Thank you. And I believe, Tammy, the pool and splash pad, well, the pool would be open by middle of June. Is that the intention? All right. Excellent. Thank you. Council colleagues, any other questions on Parks and Rec right now? While we're waiting for our blue community policy. Mr. Guy?
I can probably
Oh, we got it.
give the report without
I think-
the presentation, if you'd like.
Yeah, well, you can certainly provide some context.
Sure.
Until
Sure.
Ms. Preston gets it up.
Sure. So staff were tasked by council to provide a policy basically centered around Blue Communities policy that was implemented and passed through council in 2022. So the purpose of well, here we have it. So that's great. So the purpose of the report is to provide a Blue Community policy that supports the provision and promotion of local water or municipal tap water and ban the sale and use of bottled water from municipal facilities and properties where potable water is available. So on April 19th, 2022, the municipality of North Grenville joined 40 other communities across Canada as being designated a Blue Community. A Blue Community recognizes the importance of protecting its water supply and ensure clean, safe water for generations to come. The municipality of North Grenville recognizes the importance of promoting sustainable water management practices and committed to supporting the Blue Communities project. This policy aims to encourage water conservation, protect water as a public resource, and promote public access to clean and safe water. So some background information. In 2016, the municipality of North Grenville installed a water filling station in the arena lobby here at the North Grenville Municipal Center. In 2022, the municipality of North Grenville was designated a Blue Community. In 2023, the municipality of North Grenville began using alternative methods to serve water and other than bottled water at municipal run events. In 2024, the municipality of North Grenville implemented the ban of the sale of bottled water in vending machines at the municipal center. And we also prepared and sent a survey with the assistance of our communications department to all of our external stakeholders for feedback regarding the phasing out of the sale and the use of bottled water at their events in municipal facilities. The results did favor the implementation of eliminating bottled water in municipal facilities. And I can just quickly, some of the questions that were asked as part of the survey is how often do you sell or offer bottled water at your event? How would a ban on selling or serving water bottles at your event impact your organization? Would you consider alternative methods of serving and offering water to your patrons or guests? If so, what would those methods be? What barriers would prevent you from offering other methods of water? How important is it to you that your municipality encourages protection and preservation of water resources? How important is it to you to help protect and preserve water resources? Those were some of the questions that were asked. So as part of our recommendations for implementation, we looked at a three-phased approach. Starting in 2024, the municipality will encourage and promote the use of well water or municipal tap water in municipal facilities to our stakeholders by communicating information through the municipal website and social media platforms. Phase 2, which would begin in 2025 into 2026, the municipality will support its stakeholders by providing alternative methods of serving water at events held at indoor municipal facilities by installing indoor water fill stations at the North Grenville Municipal Center, which we already have 2 water fill stations on the arena side. As an update, I can provide, we will be installing a 3rd water fill station on the main lobby side here at the Municipal Center. The curling club, I've been in some talks with the curling club. They currently do have a water fill station within their lobby area of the curling club. They would like consideration to be installing one in the curling area. So staff at the Municipal Center or through Parks and Rec are going to work with the curling club to see if that is a possibility to do that. Other facilities would be the private Blake Williamson Memorial Hall, as well as the North Grenville Fire Hall and the North Grenville Library. Implement the ban on the sale and use of bottled water in indoor municipal facilities, including the North Grenville Municipal Center, the private Blake Williamson Memorial Hall, North Grenville Library, and the canteen at the North Grenville Municipal Center. I just want to speak quickly on the word ban. It's a strong use of a word. I think on further reflection, we would be looking to encourage with the potential or hope that it would eliminate the use of plastic water bottles in our municipal facilities. And the way to do that we intend to do that is through working with our communications department, as well as signage within our municipal facilities, and also through our standard terms and agreements that we use for all of our client rental contracts. So ban, as I mentioned, might have been too strong of a word that we've used within the draft policy. Next, sorry, fine. Phase 3, 2026 into 2027, the municipality will support its stakeholders by providing alternative methods of serving water at outside events at Riverside Park and South Gore Park by purchasing portable water filling stations for use. Install a water filling station at South Gore Park. And again, the word ban, I think we would rethink that to some degree. The sale and use of bottled water at these municipal parks. Currently, we do have a water filling station at Riverside Park. Staff have requested some assistance from the Water and Sewer Division of Public Works to do some research for us in terms of getting potable water at South Gore Park and at the Maplewood Hall. Currently, we do test the water there, but only for hand washing. We don't test water for as a potable water, drinking water. As I understand, we don't have a license to do that. So Public Works through their Water and Sewer Division are going to assist us to see where we need to go to be able to make that happen. So this is just an example of our indoor water filling stations. And next slide. This is an example of an outdoor portable water filling station that potentially the municipality could look at purchasing or renting and providing this as an alternative for our community groups to use at their community events or sports tournaments that are outside in our main parks. And there are a number of those types of portable units that are a possibility to look at it in the future down the road. So some of the financial implications, the purchase of our indoor water filling stations are anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000 per station installed. And again, we would do some research on the purchase of an outdoor water filling station. The one that I showed you on the previous picture, that comes at a cost of around $60,000. And that is the presentation. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. All right, I will recognize Councillor Strachian and I believe Deputy Mayor, and I'll put myself on the list unless there are other speakers. All right, Councillor Strachian.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much, Director Guy. I think this has been long awaited to have the policy put before us. So thank you very much for putting the time and effort into this. And I appreciate the phased in approach to this because there are many moving parts and the level of complexity with the different municipal facilities and so on, and the different standards of water and access to water and so on. I would say though, the word ban is appropriate. It falls in line with the Blue Communities policy that we work towards a total ban of bottled water. Ban of the sale is one part of it, but also to work towards in our communications that we're discouraging the use of bottled water. And I think that we're already seeing that in many places in the community. Kemptville Live is a very good example of that. They haven't allowed bottled water into their event, and it's a very large event, for quite some time because they have an appropriate way to refill your bottle by having those water filling stations similar to the buggy that you showed. So I think with the right communication and with some time, we will achieve that ban. So I wouldn't say we should back away from strong wording. I think it's appropriate in this case and is certainly what we intended when we signed on for the becoming a Blue community. One of the idiosyncrasies, I guess, with time and how things evolve, does say bottled water. Obviously, bottled water now comes in cans. And the intent here isn't just about, it's not about plastic bans, it's about the content of those containers. So, you know, I think for anybody looking at this, it's not just plastic water bottles, it's also canned water that we would be looking at as well. And I think, I know it's a step in the right direction, less plastic, but it's certainly not fully in line with the Blue Communities policy. With respect to the portable water bottle filling station, we have been approached by Kemptville Live to perhaps take over their water bottle filling station simply because they feel that it's not being used to its maximum because they basically use it only for their events throughout the entire year, and they feel that the municipality would probably be in a better place. So I think that that's an opportunity perhaps to move us forward in having a setup like that available to community groups as well as our own. And thank you very much for the updates on the water filling stations throughout the community. I know you've got a couple underway at the library that provide outside access. There's a new one at the renovated space at Riverside Park and at this side of the arena. So I think the biggest challenge is making sure that people have access to that water in the appropriate spaces. So those are my comments, but otherwise, thank you very much on your report. I think it's well thought out and should be well received by the community.
Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Guy, thank you as well as for bringing this forward. I just wanted to get a bit of clarity on the 3 phases. I remember during the budget deliberations that there was an ask by the BIA for a water bottle filling station at the library. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to recall that you said you had or could find the money for it in this fiscal year rather than wait until phase 2. Is that correct? And what can we do this year in terms of installing other water bottle filling stations? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Barclay. If I could just clarify, the BIA was looking for a water filling station at the North Grenville Library. So we have, Parks and Rec has $10,000 in the budget this year to install a new water filling station at the North Grenville Library. Joe has been working on that, and our $10,000 budget is going to allow us to replace the current water fountain inside the North Grenville Library with a new water filling station. And I believe, Joe, it will have a water fountain component to it. We will also be installing a brand new water filling station on the exterior of the library as well. And our plumbing cost estimates ended up being quite a bit lower than we originally considered, which is going to allow us to install a 3rd water filling station here at the municipal center on the main side, which was originally intended not to happen until 2025. We're going to be able to probably get that done this year within the $10,000 budget.
That's great news. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan, before I go to you, I just had a couple of questions. Of course, it's wonderful that we get to promote what is a high quality of water in North Grenville. Some people who move into the community think because the water has an odor that there's a problem with the water. And clearly we have very high quality water. So the addition of water filling stations is wonderful. And I think will go a long way to really encouraging people to basically both understand we have a high quality of water and to use that free of charge. So I think that's fantastic. I do have concerns, however, about the prohibition of bringing bottled water into Maplewood Hall, because as I understand it, we don't have potable water right now in Maplewood Hall. And I understand at South Gore that is also the case. So my concern, particularly with children, is sugar. And we have a sugar epidemic, quite frankly. And sometimes if kids don't bring a receptacle for their own water, or they're lobbying for a refreshing beverage, they may lobby for the Coke or the ginger ale. And as I've said previously, if a family shows up at a particular Maplewood Hall without a water receptacle and there's no preparation or no anticipation of serving water, I'm just trying to figure out, how does someone actually drink water on site at those facilities? So I guess I would like to see a little more nuance in terms of how we implement a full ban. I'm not sure in every facility it's actually that achievable. And I do want to ensure that it's one thing to have potable water available, but if people come without an expectation that they need to serve themselves water, they may not show up with water bottles. They may not have sports bottles at their disposal. So how do we get around that? The other thing is we have these wonderful filtered water stations. I use them all the time. Of course, if my kids are going on the ice for hockey or soccer, whatever, of course, we're going to use whatever's in the facility and not buy water. But I remain concerned that some people are no longer using those water filtration stations because they don't know, are the filters updated? Is the water at the standard that it would be for any other water filling facility? So I think there is some education to encourage people to use these filtration stations and ensure that they have the confidence in thinking, okay, well, the filter's been changed every 6 months or whatever the protocols are for those filling stations. So I think from my perspective, I would like us to contemplate where in certain situations people might expect they would have access to water and it may not always be potable water. And I know, Ms. Dunlop, I asked this question of you just before council, and I don't know if you have comments, particularly on Maplewood or South Gore in particular.
Thank you, Your Worship. Director Guy and I also had this conversation a little while ago in regards to those two specific locations, as well as the terminology ban in use within the report. The intent, I will start with the ban in use first, if you do not mind, Madam Mayor. The idea is that when someone comes in with a plastic bottle or a convenience container of water, be it aluminum can or be it plastic, the intent would be to educate. The idea would be, we're not going to say, get out, take your water and leave. We're going to educate them to say what the opportunities and what is available to them as they come into the buildings that are attached to the municipal water system with potable water. With South Gore and Maplewood, they're both on rural wells. The rules in regards to the Safe Drinking Water Act are a little different than a rural home. They have to be sampled and on a certain continuous process in order to be classified as potable. We do not, as Director Guy identified, do that specific regime. We would have to put in a different protocol in accordance with the Safe Drinking Water Act, and Director Guy and Director Finley from the Public Works Department have been in consultation. What that means in regards to costs and timelines has yet to be determined, or even if it is feasible to be completed at those two locations. So until that comes before council within a budgetary program, we can't say that we will have potable water available until that time, which may be a year or further down the road.
Great, thank
And-
you. And I'll just go to Councillor O'Sullivan next.
If I could.
Yes,
And
Mr. Ryan.
and as part of the recommendations, I think one of the reasons that we had the three-phase approach was certainly thinking about outdoor facilities or thinking about the Maplewood Hall and the idea that it may take till 2027 before we can actually provide safe potable drinking water out of a water fill station at one of those locations. And to the CAO's point, I think, it's a lot about education and a lot about informing and making sure that the general public understands the policy that we have in place and what we're encouraging them to do. And it's not to, recommend that we put a bylaw in place that, that people cannot bring, plastic bottled water, but we certainly want to get to that stage where, that people understand what we're trying to achieve as a municipality and that we have alternatives for them.
Right, and that's wonderful to have alternatives, as long as you can make use of the alternatives. And I'm still struggling with that question. So perhaps we can focus on ban on the sale. I don't even know if it's practical to say ban on the use, because people can bring in their own bottled water. It's going to happen from time to time. So I think we have to be accurate with what the intention is. But I've spoken for too long, so I'll go to Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think some of the comments and questions I was going to mention have already been discussed. When Director Guy mentioned that there are a couple of things that he's going to be able to accelerate because some things haven't cost as much, I was wondering if we could move this all along a little faster rather than going all the way to 2027. But some of the issues with Maplewood Hall and private wells have explained that. I would like to see, I agreed with Councillor Strakeryan that the aim here was to ban the use of bottled water. And I'd like to, I think it was appropriate to use a strong word, but obviously that doesn't work everywhere. So I'd like to see us ban it wherever we can. And perhaps the use of little Dixie cups that can be disposed of is an alternative for people who don't have a receptacle with them to fill up their water. I think that's it, but I'm happy to see this finally getting going. The other thing is that if you make the price of bottled water significant, it will also deter people from buying bottled water.
Councillor, sorry, I'm sorry, I don't know who I haven't recognized. Deputy Mayor, and then back to Councillor Strakeryan. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I thought you didn't recognize me.
I apologize.
Yeah, okay.
Who I haven't recognized.
No. Through you to either our CAO, Ms. Dunlop, or Director Guy. It's been quite a while since the Oxford Mills Community Association held the lease to Maplewood Hall. But I was a member of the association during those years. And I remember getting the call on the emergency number to go out and rejig the ultraviolet water filtration system. So I'm surprised that we're back to, beware there's no potable water here. That sign would come up and come down depending on the state of the UV filtration system, which is a marvelous device if you go into the utility closet and take a look at it. So my question is, the reason we don't have potable water in Maplewood Hall, I get the sense that it's more to do with the reporting regime, or have the rules and regulation about well water in public buildings, has that changed over time? Or is just the UV filtration system not up to snuff? Is it the rules regulation or okay, all right. Karen, thanks.
Ms.
But
Dunlop?
yeah, is it the reporting regime that's onerous? And that we'd have to
From what,
Let's let Ms. Dunlop answer the question. Okay.
It's my understanding that no, it is classified as a designated facility, but it was never classified as potable water. The regime, which is weekly, I understand, in regards to testing, and it's for use for washing of hands, et cetera. It's not for consumption, and it's been posted as such. We'd have to go to a step beyond just the treatment system that is currently installed. But I believe, please, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, that everything is still in operation as it always has been.
Joe?
That's correct. The UV system is maintained to that standard. We have annual and quarterly maintenance sessions on that unit. It's maintained to that standard. That's correct.
Okay. Go ahead. Yep,
Yeah.
turn on your mic.
Something has changed. Either we were illegally consuming the water, but while I was on the board of the OMCA, I was there during the installation of the UV filtration system, and that was to give us potable water. Now, I'll grant you there was lots of problems with that system. I was one of the people signing off on a weekly basis, inspecting it. And, there was always seemed to be some problem. Maybe it was based on mineral deposits or whatever. But now, and it might be since the municipality took over the management of the hall, I'm not sure. But it seems to me that the purpose of the UV filtration system was to provide potable water. So it no longer is, or it never was. I'm very unclear on the status of it currently and what the status was before.
Before recognizing, I think I have Councillor Strachan and Councillor Sullivan on the list. Ms. Dunlop, do you have any final comment here? Or maybe you can bring back a status update. Is that best?
That was going to be my, the comment. We can do a status update to see if our comments were inaccurate and if it's classified as potable with a specific regime or if there's been changes. So we can bring that back.
Great. Okay. So I have Councillor Strachan and then Councillor Sullivan. Do I have that right? Did I miss any hands? Okay. I've been chairing meetings all day, so I apologize. It's been a lot of different discussions. Strachan and then O'Sullivan, and then I'll put myself on the list.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess there's a few final comments. I mean, I would like to understand and look forward to that report from the CAO regarding, what the current regime is or what needs to change. Many of us drink well water on a regular basis at home. So I understand that publicly available water and so on has different standards and different regime for testing and so on. However, our water is pretty darn good here and well water is pretty fantastic. So it wouldn't be nice to be able to avail ourselves of that. Again, as I mentioned previously, and as Director Gaia said, we're talking about a phased in approach and we're talking about making sure that there's suitable alternatives. You can't say, don't drink the water, but we're not going to give you other options. So I think it's figuring out what those other options are, if it's making sure that there's an appropriate testing regime brought into place, if it means that, there's another way to provide water that isn't bottled water. I think that we can think about a whole bunch of different alternatives there, but the whole point is a suitable alternative means that there's potable water at these sites. So, working towards that means that we're working towards a better solution than what we currently have, which is just allowing everybody to bring in bottled water and so on without any communication as to where there's a suitable alternative, where it's better. I would say anybody under the age of 20 always has a water bottle at school. They're all used to filling up water bottles. Now, whether they choose to do it or not, that's a whole other story. But that is part of what they're used to, and kids are raised that way right now. And, you get water bottles at every event. It's part of, standard swag, I guess, at a lot of events. So I think the challenges are perhaps not with the younger generation, but maybe with folks that are on the other side of 20 or 30. I think we've got already a good way of starting there. So, just building upon that. And, we're not talking about banning people. We're talking about working towards a ban on the waters, the bottled water. And so if people bring in the bottled water. It's that education, it's the signage, it's that, kind of communication piece, but we're not trying to ban people from participating in events at parks or within our facilities and so on. It's just trying to make sure that there's more that goes along with this. And so I think we're on the cusp of doing all of this, and it's happening in different ways. Some of it's happening outside of any communication from the municipality, which is fantastic because it means that, residents and community groups are taking that on themselves and taking the initiative to communicate within their own events and within their own membership. So, I appreciate that there's some complexity here and it's not a one size fits all for all of our facilities. But it certainly seems to me like there's some thought put into the areas that we need to give additional consideration to. So thank you. And I will leave it at that. My final comment. Thank you.
Councillor, I think back to Councillor Sullivan. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just need to clarify, I don't know whether it'll be Director CEO Dunlop or Director Guy, but is there a problem with the Oxford Mills water period? Because there are a lot of rural communities. I grew up and lived in Greeley and Metcalfe for many years. There is only wells and septic in Greeley and Metcalfe, and I expect in North Gore and Cars. And so there's many places where every public building and every private residence is on a well. So what about Burt's Rapids? What about Bishop's Mills? What about those other places? Or is it just a problem in Oxford Mills?
Yes, I'm not sure we have a problem with water. It's how municipality offers potable water. Is that right?
That's exactly it, Your
Yes.
Worship. It's the idea of a private well versus a public well. So the idea of a private home does not have the regulations and requirements for testings, et cetera. It's not saying that there's anything wrong with the well at the Maplewood Hall, which also serves the garage. But it's the requirements, the legislative requirements for sampling and quality controls that are the restriction.
Okay, thank you. That's what I understood, but I haven't heard anything about the hall at Burt's Rapids or the hall at Bishop's Mills or
They're all by the community.
We don't operate those facilities, Councillor O'Sullivan.
oh, okay, so you do test the water in those on a weekly basis? Or is it only because you own the well that doesn't need to be tested?
I
'Cause
think
you
the
own well?
distinction is municipal facilities versus privately owned facilities. So because the community halls in Burritts and in Bishops are owned, right, and managed by private citizens, they have more discretion in terms of how they facilitate access to water. In a municipal facility, which is a government facility, I think the standard in serving the public writ large is a higher standard. And I think your testing protocols are much more rigorous. Have I said that correctly? Okay, so that's the distinction we're making tonight, but it has nothing to do with quality of water. We went through this at the Kemptville Campus Agroforestry Center, where they don't have potable water either, is my understanding. They host a lot of events. They need access to water. I bet you they are bringing in bottled water because it's the only way that they can host the maple breakfasts and the many other things that they do from time to time. So it is that distinction between municipally owned and privately owned, even if you're serving the community as you would be in Bishops or in Burt's.
So the
Yeah.
Agroforest Center, though.
Is
we do
Kemptville
own it.
Campus. It's a Kemptville Campus facility, but as a not-for-profit entity, they also actually are subject to a higher standard because of the health unit. So
Okay.
the health unit actually does not allow for the use of potable water without some significant and rigorous testing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so maybe to close, we really appreciate this, and I believe that for the most part, this obviously is it's a wonderful step in the right direction. I did check what the Blue Communities commitment requests of municipalities, and it is a sale. It is a ban on the sale of water. It is not a ban on the use, a ban, sorry, on the sale of bottled water. It's not a ban on the use. And again, I just think we just have to be careful in our communications with the public that we are providing options. And I agree, Councilor Strachian, it may be that, the under 20 set have been very well trained, but you have a senior who's 60 who walks into a facility, they're diabetic, and they don't necessarily aren't really prepared to use one of our refillable water stations. I found myself certainly at sometimes buying a bottle of water so that I could then refill it because I haven't brought my own water bottle because I wasn't thinking that far ahead. So I don't think you can buy a water bottle over at the canteen in our municipal center. There's no way to actually get a receptacle for a refillable water station. So it is a process of training people to think ahead, but I would suggest that maybe we focus on the prohibition of the sale versus the use at this stage and bring that in as we have more confidence that there are little cups for people to use if they need to access a refillable station in the absence of having their own way to fill up a water bottle. So perhaps you can do a little more thinking in that regard. I think it would be valuable to make sure that people feel prepared and that they can access water ultimately in whatever way possible. The addition of stations is wonderful, particularly outside. I think it will be very well embraced, but there are circumstances where I think we do need to recognize that it's not as simple as we might hope. And Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Just quickly, I'm in agreement with what we're talking about and discussing tonight, but I think using the word ban is very strong. I'd like us to find an alternative. Thank you.
So I wonder if there might be benefit to revisiting the report and bringing it back in a month so that you could better reflect some of those nuances on the word, say, ban. I think there's some general understanding that there's value in going that direction, but looking at the distinction between use versus sale and also providing a little more clarity on what the strategies would be in the buildings where we don't have potable water or in the parks where there's no potable water at the present time. Councillor Strachan?
Absolutely, we can do that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, banning the sale is definitely the right wording because that is Blue Communities.
Yes.
Discouraging the use of
Sure.
is likely the better way to talk about the rest of it because it is not explicit in Blue Communities. So I think discouraging the use could lead us towards that path where it would be the equivalent of a ban, but banning the sale and discouraging the use as a suggestion, maybe the wording so that ban isn't the only word that shows up in this report.
Indeed. So with all the conversation that we've had, would it be possible for staff to revisit the report, given all of the comments, and bring it back to us in a month? Is that possible? And then you can provide more clarity on some of those areas where we're not super clear.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Staff certainly can. I think it's based on the conversation. I think it's a great idea, and we need to get some more clarity on the Maplewood Hall, obviously, and a little more information through our Public Works Department in their investigations for South Gore as well. And we can certainly look at the intended wording for use.
Great.
For sure.
So Ms. Preston is advising that certainly we could bring this report back on June 18th. So that's well ahead of the summer. Still keeps everyone on track. So if council is amenable, could I have a motion to that effect to defer? Thank you, Councillor Strachan. Thank Deputy Mayor Barkley. And this is the motion to defer until June 18th, the implementation of the Blue Community Policy. Perfect. Thank you again for all of the comments this evening, Council, and to staff who are working hard to advance the policy. We appreciate it. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Excellent. Thank you. That carries. All right. Zamboni purchase, equally exciting, eagerly anticipated. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report before you today is to award the purchase of a Zamboni Model 526 propane ice resurfacer with options, tractor mount attachment, electric ice edger, and a blade changing system from Zamboni for a total of $138,260 plus HST. The municipality requires an ice resurfacer that can meet the needs of up to 40 ice resurfacings daily on weekends, extensive ice maintenance days, booked twice a week, intensive ice installation days with no pause in meeting service needs of the facility and our users. Approved in the 2024 budget, in our capital budget, it was the addition of these assets to the facilities division that will be invaluable to meeting the department's operational and legislative responsibilities. So as stated, the budget 150,000 was approved in the 2024 budget for an ice resurfacer, tractor attachment, electric ice edger, and a blade changing system. We received several options from two proponents. We're recommending option one is under budget and meets the needs of the facilities division for $138,260 plus HST. The bidding process, there was two RFPs received, one from Zamboni and one from Resurface Corp. Next slide, please. The Zamboni equipment and benefits, so it's the efficient governance and service delivery, commitment to asset management planning, and ensuring maintenance review operational support requirements to existing assets. Next slide, please. So that's the end of the report. I'd be happy to answer any questions on the report.
Thank you. Council colleagues, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Peshnik. Will this give us 2 or 3 Zambonis, and are we retiring one? What happens to the other Zamboni? How do we press that into service?
Great question. Through you, Madam Mayor. So currently we operate 2 in the facility because we operate a twin pad facility and we often do double floods. So the machines are out operating at the same time. The lead time on this piece of equipment is about a year approximately. So we would need to maintain 2 operating machines for the next year. The intention when this machine arrives on site, we would keep the 3rd machine as a redundancy continuity plan for the division because we have had breakdowns occasionally that impact service requirements of the facility. So this continuity plan would assist the Riverside facility in large inclement weather events, and it'll also help as a redundancy here at this facility because service to get parts, it's not like just going down the road to the service center. Parts are coming from the GTA, so it does take a bit of time to get parts to site if there is a breakdown. If that helps answer the question.
Great.
Yeah, but the redundant machine is still serviceable. It still can flood ice. Any thoughts to taking it down to Curry Park when needed?
That's a great question. So as and then the report, the idea is that the redundant piece or the continuity piece is going to help meet all facilities, not just this facility. It'll help at Riverside. It would help with the Skateway, that sort of stuff, just to help with maintenance across the board.
It certainly seems like you have maxed out the life of certainly the one Zamboni on the ice that has occasionally experienced breakdowns in more recent years. So I think I was struck in the report by how many floods you actually do in a day on a weekend, where basically you have operational ice anywhere from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. So
Yeah.
Those machines are working hard, clearly. What's the lifespan of a Zamboni typically?
Great question. So it ranges depending on your facility and your service requirements. On a single pad facility, you could get upwards of 10 years. We have a very programmed multi-purpose facility or twin pad facility. So it's in the window of around 7 years right now is the lifespan of an ice resurfacer.
Just because they're so heavily used?
That's correct.
Okay, excellent. Okay, colleagues, anything else in regards to this one? And are they under warranty? Does the servicing, Joe, happen locally? Do we service these machines? How do they get maintained over the span of their life?
Great question. So we do have a local service provider that does maintenance on a semi-annual, quarterly. There's different maintenance that we do. We're on a biannual basis. We send them back to the manufacturer to do calibrations of the conditioner, the piece that maintains the ice surface. That cannot be done locally because they have the skill sets and the knowledge and the tools to to adequately condition the piece of equipment. But yeah, we do have service providers locally.
Excellent, thanks. All right, Councillor Strachian?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Continuing on the environmental theme, I know we've had this conversation at some point regarding the electric version of a Zamboni, and I believe it was Carlton Place that recently purchased one. Have you heard any feedback from them or what their experience has been so far?
That's a great question. We did reach out to Carlton Place when they had it about a week or so to see if they were enjoying it, if it was working for them. It was at the time. It was a brand new machine. Their service delivery is different than ours. Their facility layout, how we program our facility is different, and our service requirements are different. So it'd be good. It's a good test for us to see how they make out for our next purchase, to see if that's a good option in the future in 3-4 years when we look to make another purchase.
Great, and I noted some of those details in the report, and obviously, I think as they become more commonly used, you'll be able to anticipate and hopefully see the acquisition of one as promising, but understand that at this stage, there's a little more, it would be of some comfort to have a little more track record with some of the more heavily used ones. Okay, all right. Council, if there's no more hands, I believe that the motion recommended for this evening is that council award the purchase of the Zamboni Model 526 propane ice resurfacer with options, tractor mount attachment, electric ice edger, and blade changing system for a total amount of $138,260 plus HFT, of course. We all pay HST all the time. So a mover and a seconder, please. If only there wasn't HST. Okay, I have Councillor Wilson and Councillor O'Sullivan. All right, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Okay, excellent. Good luck with the acquisition of that machine. All right, we're going to move on. Planning and development, nothing. Public works, nothing. I believe we just have one other matter, which is the bicycle rack cost sharing program policy that was pulled from the consent agenda. And I know someone from Parks and Rec will be speaking to that. Mr. Pashnik? The bicycle, Doreen, Councillor Sullivan, do you want to, I think you had asked that it be pulled from the consent agenda? Okay. I think Mr. Guy has to leave for a family matter, so I'm sure Mr. Pashnik will be able to answer any questions, and Tammy, of course. All right, Councillor Sullivan, why don't you ask your question?
So is there a presentation for it? No?
I don't believe so, because it was proposed for the consent agenda. Is that right?
Correct. This rose from the advisory committee, so this is a significant resolution from the advisory committee. It's been vetted by the advisory committee and recommended for council adoption.
Okay, thank you very much. I will, okay, thank you. So the Health, Wellness, Fitness, Active Transportation Advisory Committee put this forward as a recommendation to council, and it was accepted. So this is the policy that, and the purpose was to encourage property and business owners to provide residents and patrons with active transportation options, which would include bicycle racks. And so the municipality is offering to cost share the program with properties and business owners for the installation of these bicycle racks at existing multi-unit residential and commercial spaces. So in going forward, any new build would, during the site plan, would have bicycle racks put in place. But people who are going to shops or businesses or live in multi-unit residential areas do not have bicycle racks, and there's no mechanism in place to encourage or require that the landlords or the business owners put the bike racks there. So this is an incentive where the municipality will cost share with them and to put the bike rack in place. So that is what the policy is. And I have a couple of questions. Is there an option for the business or the landlord to have a plaque put on it? I know they get a tax receipt. So is there an option for advertising on it. Sometimes you'll see bicycle racks that'll have it, that it's, you know, put in place, or bicycle rack courtesy of RBC or courtesy of Tim Hortons or whatever. Just wondering if that is in place for them. And what is the communication plan to promote this program? Because certainly the people aren't, the business owners or landlords are not going to know about it to do it unless there's a communication plan to put it in place. So those were the questions. And then on the policy statement where it says somewhere it said for business residents and business owners or customers, I would like to suggest that they also include the word employees too. So those were my questions and suggestions.
Okay, so Councillor Strachan has just proposed some, I think, modest amendments to I guess, the protocol in terms of enacting the policy. Councillor Sullivan, Ms. Holbert or Mr. Peshnik, do you have any comments on those adjustments?
Do you want to speak?
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead, Tammy.
So with regards to opportunities for advertising on the bike racks, we can have staff look into what styles exist that might allow that, and also evaluate whether that would be part of the cost sharing, or that piece would likely rest with the business owner to develop any advertising they want to put on it. And with the wording that you have suggested, we can make that update. No problem. Was there another question that I missed? Oh, communication plan. So with the approval of the policy and program, we'll work with the communications team to ensure that the community is well aware of it. And we can work with economic development to include it in outreach to businesses and that sort of thing.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who has worked on getting this policy in place.
Good. So Ms. Preston, just a direction, we would want to receive the report.
So apologies to Councillor O'Sullivan. Could you direct me? I apologize. I missed the section where you said to add employees, just so that we can note it as an amendment. I apologize. In the policy statement?
Okay, so sorry, I just want to look at it again.
That's okay.
Because I had it at home and I wrote it down here. Oh, policy statement, add employees. Okay, we encourage property owners and business owners to provide residents and patrons. So I would provide residents, employees, and patrons with active transportation options.
I think what Councillor Sullivan is trying to emphasize is that obviously staff who work at these establishments would probably also benefit from those bike racks. So it's just to emphasize that the value of these bike racks extends beyond patrons and clients. Okay.
Yep.
And the owners themselves.
Yep.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
So we have that captured, and maybe Ms. Preston, I'll have you read the motion that you're recommending this evening, and I'll recognize Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I just have a quick question to either of you, whoever would like to answer. So regarding the location, you know, I think sometimes folks want to have a bicycle stand or a bench or whatever it is in these similar kinds of funding mechanisms that we have in a specific spot, because it's something that a location that's meaningful. But for a bicycle rack, I think it also has to be placed in a location that is usable and safe and all that kind of thing, and would actually be appropriate for, you know, the bicycle traffic and from an accessibility perspective as well. So is that part of the conversation that you're, you know, if there's a recommendation to a resident that's put forward a request to say, okay, maybe not quite here, but slightly over here, and that's the conversation that takes place? Is that the negotiation that takes place?
Yeah. Tammy? Is it? Okay, Councillor Sullivan, sure.
Oh, wait, it's on. Okay, thank you. Sorry, item number 3 under the procedure talks about the location and the discussion between the property and business owner. We, at the Active Transportation Health Wellness Committee, we had the plan from the City of Ottawa, which addresses the ideal location, et cetera, for bike racks. And that is also something that will have to be discussed with the landlords, especially like, for example, at the mall, RBC would be interested in putting a bike rack, but they have to talk to the owner of the property to discuss where it can be. And certainly that's an important piece. It can't block sidewalks and there's lots of issues. So it will have to be considered for the best location.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sutherland. I just wanted to confirm with staff that you have a policy in place for these discussions to determine it. Is that the intent is to use what you have from the City of Ottawa?
Yes.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor Sullivan. It was directed towards staff. I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah.
But I think I'm getting nods. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. So then I'll turn it to Ms. Preston to read the amended motion, please, for our consideration.
Absolutely. So the amended motion is that council adopt the bicycle rack cost sharing program policy with an amendment to the policy statement section to include employees under the listed provided for between residents and patrons.
Good. Can I have a Councillor O'Sullivan? I assume you'll move that. A seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Any final comments? Seeing none, I'm going to call a vote. All in favor, please. Good. That carries. Thank you. All right. With that in mind, I believe that we are at other business, and I don't think there's any other business this evening, Ms. Preston. Excellent. Notice of motions. Do I have any notice of motions this evening? Not seeing any. Introduction and consideration of bylaws. I believe we've addressed this. Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Preston. Questions from members of the public? Just a couple here this evening. None? Eager to go. Eager to go. That's the message I'm getting here. And obviously nothing coming through the media. All right. So then we'll move to a confirmatory bylaw, and that is that bylaw 3624 to confirm proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on May 7, 2024 be adopted and passed. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Wilson, Councillor O'Sullivan, mover seconder, thank you. Calling the vote, all in favor. And resolution to adjourn, Councillor Strachan, thank you. We're adjourning at 8:50. Deputy Mayor is going to second that. Absolutely in favor of adjournment. And I'm calling the question, all in favor.